Welcome to this graphic design course that will make your design superior to how they were before you learned the content you're about to see. For today's course, I've pulled together some of the most recent workflows, tips, tricks and hacks that I'm using in my graphic design life on a day-to-day basis. And first, we're actually jumping into Adobe Illustrator, but we're not going to spend a whole lot of time in today's course in Adobe software. I'm about to show you a really fast way to make highlights or shadows for your color schemes, and that's so your work can really come to life. So in Adobe Illustrator, I have two colors here that make up a part of my design on this dragon. I simply press M for the rectangle tool and cover any colors of your scheme like so. Now I'm going to initially change this rectangle to white, but this will probably change later in the process. Now with the rectangle still selected, come into the transparency window and toggle some of the options along here. Now for me, I like screen or overlay or similar options to that. And it's all about experimenting and see what actually works for your scheme on your project. And you can also change the opacity as well if the contrast is too stark or too light. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can come in and change the color of the rectangle itself, maybe include a tiny bit of color depending on what your design is like, and also how different you want the highlights or the shades to be. Now, this will take some trial and error before getting the hang of it. And this right here looks pretty cool actually. So now we want to select all of the objects and then come into Object and Flatten Transparency. And from here, we need to ungroup our selection, and in doing so, we now have different separate shapes. Now, the next step makes things ultra organized, and that is to come into the swatches panel while having the color scheme selected, and then creating a new group by clicking the folder icon found here. Now you're going to have a neat highlight or shade color scheme for your design. And of course, you don't have to just use two colors. You can use many different colors that make up your design. And then it's just a case of working those colors into the work itself. And for having many colors in a scheme, this is far quicker than using the HSB sliders or other alternatives. And actually, for the next part of today's course, we're going to run with something else in relation to color. When it comes to color, there is a new method I spent countless hours on perfecting, and in doing so, my workflows are not only faster, but now super efficient. And let's get right into that now. Okay, so here we have a grayscale package design for a brand that sells high quality sporting socks, and that is to trendy and younger generations. Now, why am I telling you these details about the target audience? Well, because we are going to quickly generate a color scheme in the most modern and efficient way possible. And you will see just how useful it actually is. So here we are in ChatGPT, and might I add, it's the free version as well. And as you can see, I've sent a very specific request to it. I've said that I want 3 different color scheme suggestions, and I want each scheme to be made up of 3 different colors. Importantly, I said what the brand does, and also mentioned things about the target audience, such as their age, their background, style, and so on. Now, I could have gone into way more detail here, but as you can see, the results are pretty on point and ChatGPT does get the message. I also asked it to justify its reasoning in the color scheme generations, which is always nice to have. You can use that justification to back up your choices and your decisions when you're pitching your designs to a client. Anyway, I'm liking this second scheme here, purple, lime green and charcoal black. Now I can envision this already on the design, and it does seem to align with a modern, trendy, kind of youthful identity. And the justification here is that the color scheme gives a bold and sophisticated kind of vibe, and the lime green gives a kick of energy, which is good, of course, for a sporting brand. And then the charcoal black gives some grounding and some contrast, which is always good. But importantly, how would this look on an actual design? Well, as you can see here, the bland grayscale design is waiting for a burst of color. And the design with color is now totally different, and it's clear this design is aimed at a certain type of person, that being young, trendy, sporting, and so on. And we've actually made a flipped version too, so on one box there's more lime green and the other has more black. There's also a hint of white within the typography, but what about that purple color? The purple is complementary to the lime green, and actually, as part of a presentation or brand material, we can just add it into the background like this. Now I feel like this scheme meets a demand for the target audience, and the color scheme was generated within just a few seconds in ChatGPT. And of course, you need to have the awareness of a competent graphic designer to understand the importance of researching the target audience. That will really define your color scheme in an efficient way. And up next, another kind of workflow or process that I myself made, and that is for optimum graphic design results at the other end. This systematic approach would allow you to never get lost on a design layout, and it will help you structure and build any design, be it a website, a poster, app, or whatever. This approach is based around grids, but it's not solely a grid-based system. The first thing we need to do is to determine the document size and the orientation. So is it a portrait design, is it landscape, or is it square? Also, consider the medium where the design will be presented. Is it print, digital, social media, and so on? And we need to consider this first and foremost because it's similar to how an artist chooses their canvas. So next, we need margins. Setting up margins is an essential step in the graphic design process, and it ensures that the final product looks visually appealing and is well balanced. Now, typically, margin sizes include 1/2 inch to 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters, and that's for print designs, while digital designs may have smaller margins. Of course, if you're working on a billboard, then your margins will be a lot larger than just 1 inch. It's all relative. Also, if you're working on a print project, you will need a bleed, and these are often about 1/2 centimeter. And now a quick pro tip. So prior to going into this system, you should know the emotion and the tone of your design. Example, it might be simple and shocking or warm and fun. You need to do this because it's going to determine some of the choices you make soon. And also you likely should have a color palette ready, typefaces chosen, and visual languages identified. This is all going to be based on your research. But next up, it's time to decide the focal point. And this is where the viewer will come first onto your design, and it's the first thing they will see. It's the primary element that should capture the viewer's attention. Now that could be a headline, it could be an image, or a key piece of information. But you should have an idea of what it's going to be, and where on your design it might be located. So for example, if you're making a poster for a brand that is marketing a new product, you might want that product itself to be the focal point. It's a pretty smart move. And at this stage, you don't need to add the actual focal point itself. Maybe just create an area or a space for it to go. And from here, it's wise to set up some columns and rows. The number of columns will depend on the complexity of your design, how much text content you have, the dimensions of the design itself, and the content you're working with. A common approach is a 10-column grid for flexibility, but of course it's entirely up to you what you run with. So now you can build up your design in regard to the grid and the focal point. Modules are the nodes created by the horizontal and vertical grid lines, and these don't have to be filled with anything actually. In fact, you can split modules up into even smaller modules, and these will be good for deciding the white space on your design. Splitting up modules into smaller modules is also wise because you can then base the content around them. For instance, if you're working with a lot of text, smaller modules might be suitable for white space around that text, and larger modules can be used for impacting visuals. Also, don't forget to work in hierarchy into your design, and always keep in mind white space and how your viewers are going to navigate across your design. Also, don't allow your viewers to become lost or disorganized. Make sure the message of the design is clear and concise, and the visual language talks right out of the design with ease. And so for our product design poster, we want the audience to fully feel the bold flavor and the energy of this drink, and how it's targeted at a younger, more modern audience. So this systematic approach to laying out and structuring your designs is pretty easy and pretty quick to do, but the end results speak for themselves. The end results are truly awesome. The next part of today's course deals with a very important subject, and that is educating graphic design clients. Now you might be asking yourself, why should we even want to educate our clients? Surely that's just a complete waste of my time. Actually, no. Educating clients means you can earn more money and you get your work approved more often by those clients. One effective approach is to present real-life examples that demonstrate the positive impact of similar design choices. For instance, a designer might showcase case studies of successful branding campaigns, ones that utilize bold colors and unconventional layouts. They might explain how these choices contributed to increased brand recognition and engagement for specific target audiences. By illustrating tangible results like this, designers can provide clients with concrete evidence of the potential success and effectiveness of their proposed concepts or styles, and this makes it easier for clients to understand and accept their approach. The importance of educating clients on a design style and concept cannot be overstated. Clients might come with preconceived ideas or preferences, and these might not necessarily align with the best design practices. By patiently guiding them through the reasoning behind specific design elements and demonstrating the positive outcomes through real-life examples, designers build a foundation of trust and credibility. Now, this collaborative educational process not only helps clients appreciate the creative vision that a designer might have, but it also empowers the designer to make more informed choices. In the end, the result is not just a visually appealing design, but it's strategic and it's a solution that resonates with a target audience, contributing to the overall success of a client's project. You may also want to try creating and presenting quick visual mockups or sketches, and these might demonstrate how the design concepts would appear in the real world. Now, this can include showcasing the design on business cards, signage, or digital platforms. Also importantly, avoid using overly technical jargon when you're talking about your concepts. You need to explain design concepts using language that is accessible to your clients. Focus on how the design aligns with their goals and enhances their brand, and also how the design is going to benefit them in the long run. That's really important. The next part of today's course is something I've mentioned before, but it's ultra helpful in generating concepts that actually work, so let's crack into it. When coming up with ideas and concepts, there is one thing advanced designers simply just love to utilize in the concept creation stages, and that is metaphors. Metaphors provide connections between seemingly non-connected objects or subjects, and that can provide a novel way to make a design concept. So let's say an intermediate designer is tasked to design an awareness poster about the spread of viruses. The poster aims to emphasize how using soap and washing your hands is important. They might jump to the idea of showing someone simply just washing their hands. The design is just forgettable, but moreover, kind of boring. The advanced designer might very well think in terms of metaphors in the concept creation process. They may take the word or concept of soap and then bring that to memory or thinking about washing hands. And that might result in a bold and a clean design like this, one of creating a brain out of bars of soap, quite literally. The minimal and clean typography just below it is enough for people to get the message in a single glance. Metaphors should be a great addition to your workflow and your processes when making concepts and designs. You should, of course, identify goals in a design project and the brief, but also try this. Rather than focusing only on achieving the intended goal, think about inverting that goal. This can obviously highlight some potential pitfalls in the project, but importantly, it can also lead to different concepts and a different way of thinking. Let me explain. Say for example, you're designing a logo or brand identity for a luxury fashion house. You might determine then that the goal should be to target elegance, sophistication, and exclusivity. However, if we invert this, we can think along the lines of boldness, simplicity, and accessibility. Of course, you need to question whether or not the design will appeal to the target audience in the brief. But inverting the goal in your briefs or projects can lead to some very out-of-the-box kind of creations and concepts. And this is often what separates an intermediate designer from an advanced designer. Another huge part of reverse thinking is to think from the audience's perspective. Now, this involves that you think or imagine you are the target audience of your project, and then you need to kind of identify what would annoy you or what would maybe not work for you. And here's a prime example. Let's say a designer is working on creating packaging for a new line of organic skincare products targeted towards consumers who are environmentally conscious. The designer might get carried away with the visual appeal of the design, which is fine, but that's mainly intermediate stuff. Advanced designers would understand how strongly the audience is environmentally conscious, and so they decide to use eco-friendly materials for the packaging, such as recyclable or biodegradable materials. They also incorporate minimalist design elements that convey a sense of purity and naturalness. Additionally, they might add information about the product's organic ingredients and the brand's commitment to sustainability. And they do this because they know this information will resonate with their audience, and they will make that very apparent on the packaging. This design will now be elevated to an advanced level because of how well it targets a specific group of people. This is reverse thinking because most designers out there think about a design or a project from the designer's point of view. They fail to recognize it from the target audience's perspective. And this course shows you some of the tips and workflows I'm currently using, and hopefully you can see how useful they can be to your workflow. But if you enjoyed today's course and you want to learn yet more content just like this, click the video on screen. But until next time guys, design your future today. Peace.